Hi everyone, Peter here from Flow High Performance, and in this presentation we're going to be covering why we should train at a high or low intensity for performance and not training at a moderate intensity. So when we do training, we basically have a disruption of homeostasis, which means basically our body is trying to keep us alive by staying the same, and by training we're disrupting that, so we're doing something to alter our present state. And what that does is it causes, number one, adaptation. So it causes an adaptation response where we get better and we adapt to the stimulus, and it also causes fatigue. So with different intensities of training, we have different levels of adaptation and fatigue. So with really high intensity training, we get high adaptation but also high fatigue. With moderate intensity training, we also get a moderate adaptation and then also moderate fatigue accumulation. With low intensity training, we don't get any adaptation, so it's not intense enough to stimulate adaptation, but we also get really no or low fatigue. Low intensity training can also reduce fatigue. So if we do really low intensity exercise and we're at a really high level, what we can do is we can simply get blood flow through the muscles that have previously been used, get our joints moving through their full range of motion in order to prepare us for the next training session that's going to be of a high intensity. So the reason that we want to only train at this high intensity level or this low intensity level is because moderate intensity training is simply not going to give us the adaptations we're after to perform at a high level. And we also get fatigue accumulation. So we don't get much, but we still get some fatigue accumulation without any real serious adaptations. So when we train at a high intensity, we get that really high adaptation that we're after that's going to actually cause us to perform better. But we also have that trade-off where we get high fatigue accumulation. But that's where we substitute in our low intensity training. So after we've done a really high intensity session, we then will probably follow it up with either a rest or a very low intensity training session where we're not trying to stimulate any adaptation, but we're also reducing or allowing fatigue to decay. So some examples of how this can be implemented. So I've got here just a general training plan, or a team sport athlete maybe. So it basically has some strength, power, and some speed work in here. So on Monday, we might have our general strength or hypertrophy type session, and we need to hit this pretty hard, so we actually stimulate adaptation. We then might have a rest day, or we might do some running technique drills, which is going to help us move well for our next day, which is going to involve some high intensity acceleration, change of direction work, and maybe some max strength work as well. So having that rest day in between is going to either decay fatigue, or if we're going to do running technique drills, it might help us decay fatigue even more and get us primed for the next day. We might then have a day off, then another rest or running technique drill day, which is going to set us up well, having that nice long rest period for our max speed and power day, which we're going to hit at a super high intensity to stimulate the adaptation we need, followed by a rest period in order to decay some fatigue and set us up for the next week of training. So I've got here also an example of a weightlifter. This is my personal sport, so I have some experience in it, and I've used this high-low system with my training that's been really effective. So for example, we might have on Monday light clean and jerks, so maybe only around 60%, so it's not heavy enough to actually get us stronger, but it's also not really going to produce any fatigue because it's so light. And we might then do our heavy squatting on this day. So this is going to be high intensity, hit it heavy, make sure we stimulate some adaptation. On Tuesday, it's going to be quite an easy day. So we might have light snatches to stay moving so we don't forget our technique, not going to cause any fatigue and also not heavy enough to stimulate any adaptation. We might do some core strength work or maybe some upper body strength work or hypertrophy or something like that, which is not really going to be very intense. But we've got to make sure when we're doing our strength work, it's enough to stimulate adaptation, but that is not going to be enough to actually take away from the next heavy day. So Wednesday might then be one of our heavy days, so we'll do our heavy snatch variation, heavy clean and jerk variation, and then maybe some heavy pulls to finish off. The next day, Thursday, again will be a light day, so light clean and jerks, and then we're also going to hit our squats nice and hard, so that's going to be pretty intense. Friday is going to be a pretty easy session, light snatches, maybe some core or upper body work, which is going to set us up well for our Saturday, which is going to be another heavy day. So we'll do our heavy snatch variation, heavy clean and jerk variation, and our heavy pulls. So as we can see, we're sort of making sure we're still doing some of the Olympic lifts, but they're light enough to make sure we're still working on our technique while not causing any fatigue. And then when we have our heavy days, we're hitting them hard. So whether it's squatting, whether that's heavy snatches and clean and jerks, squatting or pulling or whatever it is, we're hitting it hard on those days and giving ourselves enough rest and enough recovery to make sure we are able to hit those days hard. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you got something out of this video. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already.